That was all my best stuff right there. Share my wisdom on step three. I mean, I thought I was supposed to talk for 45 or 50 minutes. And it's not wisdom. This is experience, man. This is experience. And I guess what happens is, if, especially big bookers like you guys, if you stick around here for a little while and you keep going through this information, over and over and over again, you begin to develop certainly an intellectual understanding of what it is that's put in front of us here, and that's also necessary. It's not as necessary as a personal experience, but you have to kind of know what's in there too. It really matters. It matters in carrying the message, and it matters in understanding your own experience. Because I got to be honest with you, if they didn't have words, if there weren't words in the book to sort of associate with the shit that I've been going through the last 25 or 30 years, I'd have just thought I was goddamn crazy and needed to be locked up. And right now, my life is so freaking good. Uh, if I didn't know it was okay to feel this great, I'd have been like Scrooge. Remember when Scrooge didn't understand why he was so happy? Remember when he woke up on Christmas morning, he didn't know why he was so happy? I'd be all befuddled like that. But I got language and people like you guys to share this stuff with, and run around with it. I'm so happy that my friend Chris is going to spend 4 weeks with you guys. It's going to be fun. It's a big book experience with him. When you get asked to do this stuff a lot, you begin to sort of take it to task that you develop different ways of telling the same sort of story. And lately he's had a really good sense of humor. So if you got guys you're working with and gals you're working with, bring him to that, because he'll make you laugh. And sometimes laughter will get you into this thing deep. My name's Marty. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a member of the Prince George Group in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. I have been in love with Alcoholics Anonymous since July the 16th, 1987, when the obsession was removed from me. I had been in Alcoholics Anonymous in and out for a few years before that, but had no understanding about the problem, and especially about the solution. But in July the 16th, 87, in a jail cell, I screamed out for help. That help came, and the desire to drink was removed. And that's not everybody's experience, but it's the experience of a lot of people in our big book. And 4 people in the stories had powerful, profound spiritual experiences. But most of the people I meet and work with today, they have an experience, what Bill Wilson refers to as an educational variety experience, which is exactly the same as the experience I had. It just didn't happen immediately, but it still both happened suddenly. I don't know if you guys understand what I'm saying. Like suddenly, I'm a basket case, and I'm a violent and angry and raging lunatic, and suddenly I'm not. And that's the same stuff that happens for people who come in here and do this work and get engaged in this process. All old ideas, conceptions, and thoughts, they're placed aside and for exchange for a new set of concepts and ideas. And that happens suddenly. And the way it happens suddenly is one day you're walking down the road and you go, holy shit, I forgot to be pissed off today. Or holy shit, I forgot to be anxious today. Or man, I haven't even thought about a drink for 2 days. What the hell's going on here? And suddenly you realize that God is doing for you what you could not do for yourself. And the power of Alcoholics Anonymous, it befuddles the pros, right? Like, so the experts of our mental sort of makeup and our psychology and Alcoholics Anonymous befuddles them, and it's no wonder we come in here and are certainly befuddled by it in front of it. Like when you look at Alcoholics Anonymous, like, does it look like it should work? Someone says, you need to go to a meeting. Go to a meeting, and I walk into a bunch of crusty old geezers, and I'm 23 years old, and they're complaining and bitching and whining. The coffee sucks. We're in a church basement that stinks of something 50 or 60 years ago. It's terrible. It's a terror. And I go walk in and go, what? And then they point to these things on the wall, and it's like, what, really? This is the rest of my life? This is what I got to look forward to? And it's like, it doesn't look like it's going to work. But something happens when one alcoholic gets together with another alcoholic for the purpose of recovery. Something happens. And it's absolutely magnificent. And we've never really been able to explain it, but we know what it feels like to feel it. This is why I was saying I got no wisdom around this, but I know that when I get a hankering at around midnight for Magnum ice cream bars, you guys ever have those hankerings for chocolate? And I jump in the car and I go to the all-night Shoppers Drug Mart and bump into one of you knuckleheads in the middle of the grocery store at midnight. We don't start talking about the weather or the Toronto Blue Jays or anything like that. We start talking about real shit. I mean, real stuff. And when one alcoholic gets together with another alcoholic for the purpose of recovery, this power, this presence, this God seems to show up. But if you've ever golfed with alcoholics, you'll know that when two alcoholics get together for a game of golf, there's no God to be found. That's a whole different purpose. You know, I play hockey with a bunch of guys in AA, and I mean, we say the serenity prayer before we start the goddamn game. Referee drops the puck, and we beat the shit out of each other for an hour. And there's no sorries or, hey, amends made or anything. We're smashing and hacking and banging. It's a thing to behold. It's terrible. It's in a grapevine. There's a story in a grapevine about it. Look it up. Fellowship. It's a Fellowship on Ice, it's called. Look it up. You'll have fun reading that story. And that's what, you know, so, but when we get together for the purpose of this stuff, something magnificent happens. So Summer, who I've been just sort of, I don't know how this happens, right? Zoom has been an amazing thing. And I knew it wasn't going to work. You know, when COVID first hit, I'm not doing that goddamn Zoom. You know, that's for the kids. Just, I'm still young. That's for the kids. I can't do that Zoom stuff. And within a couple of weeks, you know, people had started asking me to come on and share. And within a couple of months, I was sharing all the time. And then for about a year and a half, I was doing this every single day. It's a labor of love. We do it for fun and for free. I'm so grateful to be in a position where I'm able to be with you as much as I am. And I met Summer and people like her that, you know, say, come on over here and do a little talk for us. And you know, it builds this closeness. We, my little buddy Kevin and I, we started a Monday. It was started on a Thursday night called the Backroom Meeting. It was one of the biggest meetings through the course of Zoom. And if you ever get a chance to come, if you haven't already been there, it's called the Backroom Meeting on Monday nights at 9 o'clock. Sadly, our last meeting is this coming Monday. And we're gonna pull it down. Most of us work really hard with new guys, and we got a lot of drunk guys that we're working and addicts we're working with all the time. And we're all really scurrying for time to do that. And Kevin's been paying for the whole $90 a month. He's been paying for it himself, and nobody sends any money in for the 7th. So I said, if you want to keep it going, keep it going. I threw him a couple $100 here and there, but it's like, it's expensive, man. It's been $3,000 for him since the beginning of COVID. That's his 7th tradition. So I said, you want to shut it down, buddy? We'll shut it down. So that's what's going to happen. So, but that's Monday nights. Come join us. We're doing step 12 this week, and you'll see about, you'll have an experience of fun and frolic in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a good time. So being a drunk, being an addict, being beat to a pulp, being surrendered by whatever it is that beats the living crap out of you, whatever it is sounds like a terrible thing. And if you've experienced it, which I'm sure all of you have, it is a terrible thing while it's happening. And suicidality is a regular sort of proposition. The people that love you are torn to shreds. The way you feel about them is really screwed up. You know, we hate people that have been so good to us, and we love people who haven't. You know, we love our dealers and our, you know, our bootleggers, but we hate our families and all that, because they get in our space, they screw up our, you know, and we live like that, and we're collapsed and we're brought to our knees, and we got no other option but, like in my position, in my case, July 16th, 87, to scream out for help. I couldn't do it one more goddamn day. I just couldn't do it, and I screamed out for help. Now, the thing about the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous is that you can look on the other side of an experience, and you can sometimes see where a step had sort of revealed itself, because these aren't something that Bill Wilson made up himself. These are lifelong, human being sort of nature, spiritual principles that have been sort of slapped together to formulate a 12-step program for recovery from alcoholism or drug addiction. That's what they're there for. And so, but you can sit on the other side of them sometime and see how powerlessness weighed in your life. You know, I had every time, like for years, I was trying to quit. The court said it, the parents said it, the girlfriend said it, you need to stop. Even my buddy said, if you don't stop drinking, we're going to kill you. Like, it's not, you're just you got bad Jew, man. You know, you do stupid shit. And if you don't stop drinking, you're in big trouble. And I tried. So I tried and I tried, you know, and the judge says, Mr. Cosgrove, if I see you in my court again, I tell you, you will never see the light of day. And I don't start thinking to myself, man, I better stop drinking. I start thinking about, I wonder what it'd be like to never see the light of day again. Or I wonder what it's going to be like wonder who my cellmates are going to be. I wonder, that's what I start thinking about. I'm an alcoholic. I can't stop. And if you need to qualify yourself at all, I don't know if there's anybody new here, anybody just coming here. My qualification is very simple. I can't stop when I start, and I can't stop starting. It's my qualification to be here and be with you, and it's the qualification that I give new guys when I meet them. That's all I ask. And if they don't say yes to both questions, we haven't got any sort of real business in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'll love you. I'll be your friend. I'll direct you in places you need to go. But those are the two criteria for step one for me. Powerlessness is the only issue in Alcoholics Anonymous. If I'm powerless, it's an automatic segue into that second half. My life's unmanageable by me. I can't manage my life. It doesn't say it's somewhat manageable or almost manageable, or, it says unmanageable, which means it'll never be my life will never be managed by me. It'll always be dictated to me by self. And self isn't me. I'm going along for the ride all of these years. Self is the enemy. And so I need a new manager. I can't make these changes that need making. I go into step two and I think I've had a closed mind to these spiritual propositions my whole life. And I open up my mind. My mind is pried open to the fact that I need another manager. And that's step two. My experience, and some of you might know Mark H., was that I was 14 years sober. I had never taken a step in Alcoholics Anonymous. I had been going to meetings for years and two-stepping. It's in our literature. It wouldn't be such a thing if it's in our literature, man. People don't drink and they help people. I thought I was 250 pounds of jailhouse muscle. And when I came out of prison, I didn't change a whole lot. So I moved people. And I thought Alcoholics Anonymous was don't drink and move people. And we move a lot, especially you addicts. We move you guys a lot. Brown garbage bags, mind you, and stained old mattresses and shit. And sometimes we were moving other people's stuff. We weren't even moving your stuff. We were just doing it late at night and getting the hell out of Dodge. But we moved people every week. And I thought it was don't drink and move people. I thought that was what AA was. Don't drink and help people. And I got to tell you, I got 14 years of sobriety. I got a career. I got a family. I got all that beautiful stuff. And everybody in my life was saying, oh, look at the poor mental case has turned it all around. Alcoholics Anonymous is amazing. My mother would come to you and say, thank you, AA, for all of those 14 years. I'm sitting at a meeting. I'm the closing speaker. I got the banquet speaker, and we're out having cigarettes, many of them talking about fitness. And he smoked about 5 cigarettes at a time. We're talking about, and he's a big barrel-chested, silver-haired guy with a gray beard. I got to stop describing him like this. I'm starting to look like him. He's standing there over top of me, and I'm telling him what a great AA guy I am. I'm the closing speaker at this. I'm the spiritual guy on the Sunday mornings. And he says, hey, no offense, but you're a sleep dream and you're awake. And I said, pardon? He said, yeah, you're a sleep dream and you're awake. And after the hurt subsided or the insult subsided, I said, what are you talking about? And very quickly, to not go through all of this, he said, there's an experience in Alcoholics Anonymous I can tell you've never had. And if you'd like, I would help you with that. And I said, I don't know what you mean. He said, the 12 steps. I said, oh my God, I belong to a 12 and 12 meeting. Of course, I know about it. He said, I didn't ask you whether you know about them. He said, I can tell you've never taken them. I said, I don't even know what that means. I said, I've been doing AA for 14 years. I must be doing something right. He says, oh, you're doing some things, just not doing the things. And I was like, who do you think you are? And he said, come with me. And I went up to the hotel room with him. He qualified me as an alcoholic for the first time in AA at 14 years sober. He got me to say, God is either everything or else he's nothing. What is my choice? My choice is he's got to be everything, man, or I'm a dead man. And then he moved. This is where I'm going to segue into step 3. He moved the coffee table that was in between us in the hotel room. And he got down on his knees. He says, I take my knees. Would you join me? I said, for what? 2 men in a hotel. I said, for what? He said, we're going to say a prayer. And I got down on my knees beside him, and he draped his big arms over top of me, and I could feel his whiskers alongside of my face. And we were like this. And he said the 3rd step prayer. And I was like, I have never heard anything so beautiful in all my life. Where did you find that? He said, in the big book. And I said, what big book? The big book? That thing? That archaic, ancient, old thing that the old guys use? I swear to God, guys, there was no big books in my area of Alcoholics Anonymous. Nobody talked about the big book. Nobody. When we talk about step 3, And he and I just talked a little bit about how selfishness and self-centeredness had rooted its way into my sobriety, and that my ego was alive and well, and I had no spiritual program at all, no God life, no God-centered life. I had a self-centered life with a bit player God. And I even said that to him. It's a bush league pinch hitter, as it describes in the 12 and 12. I said, I go to God when the shit happens, and I take the credit when I get out of it. That's the way I've always been. It was the kind of criminal I was. It's the kind of sober guy I was. That never changed, never changed. And so all of a sudden I'm living this life, and I don't even know what's up. I hear people using the G word at meetings, but I know they're full of shit, because they don't look like that. They don't look like they just don't look like that. So it was an unimportant thing. And the AA, I was great. Don't drink and go to meetings. That was the message. And I went to lots of meetings, and I did lots of service. I had all the positions in service you could have, but I had never taken a third step. I knew about the third step, but I had never taken a third step. And this is the interesting thing is, again, back in the days, and there's not anybody really kind of old on here, but back, and I'm not that old, guys. I'm only 58 years old, so I'm really not that old, and I'm a young 58. Even if I look 72, I got a lot of juice, man. I'm still really pumped. And so, but what happened was, if you were in Alcoholics Anonymous in 1987, 1990, 1995, and she was leaving, let's say, she packed her shit and she disappeared. You came home and that love of your life is gone, wonder why. Untreated alcoholism, but they're gone. And, and I go to the meeting that night, and there's a bunch of the old geezers standing outside the meeting with their styrofoam cups and their cigarettes. And I walk up and I say, she's gone. And one guy would say, let go and let God. And another guy would say, you need to turn it over. Those were the messages. And I shit you not, I would walk away from that thinking, you must be stupid. Because I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. And I didn't even know that they didn't know what they were talking about. And I was told, when one of them dingbats says that to you again, why don't you ask him how he does that? So I did. Hey, man, what do you mean by that? He says, oh, I don't know. That's just what they told me when I came. I was like, okay, so this is what we call AA lip flap and party line bullshit. This is what we say. We just repeat stuff because it's cute. You hear it at enough meetings, you think it's AA. And I'm going to tell you something, let go and let God. Has anybody in this room been able to do that on their own? You got pain so bad on you, your child is sick, it's on you. And just people say you got to give her to God and all that kind of stuff. I get it. But I didn't have a working God in my life. I wasn't connected to this power because I'd never taken the steps. So in step 2, acknowledging that God's everything or nothing, there's only one thing I can do. And this third step says, when you look at the ABCs, that God could and would if you were sought is where we land. So I walk into the steps. He says, here we are in the step 3, which is we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Our will is our actions, and our what did I say? Turn our will in our lives. Our will is our thinking, and our lives is our actions. We're going to turn those things over to this God. My life is no longer my business. If you listen to enough Bob Darrell and Mark Houston, you'll get that my life at this point is no longer any of my business. Now, I always look at this stuff a couple different ways. I look at it the way it happened to me. I look at it the way I work with guys, and I look at it the way that it happened to Bill Wilson. And if you go to page 13, if any of you are bringing your big book here tonight, if you go to page 13, I'm just going to touch on this real quickly. And I want people to understand that I'm one of those guys that is often accused of quote unquote rushing people through the steps. And you know what I'm talking about. That stuff's dying around here anyways. They're not saying it anymore. We've created quite a network here, and we're a pretty bright spot in Alcoholics Anonymous, but it wasn't always like that. So I would get accused of this stuff. But I want to just point to page 13, where you have to understand that Ebby and Bill were pals. And Ebby went on his last rip after a heated conversation with Ebby about certain things at the table. And it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a big deal. Ebby had come into the hospital, and he had left a copy of the Varieties of Religious Experience on Bill's nightstand because Bill was toast. His head was smashed bad. Like, he was out cold, but he was alive. And he left the book there. And at some point, Bill leafed through that book. And you notice that all the stories in the Varieties of Religious Experience, and if you've ever read it, if you ever tried to read it, it's a tough read, man. I highly recommend to get a copy and have it in your nightstand for like 30 years. And just every once in a while, just look at a couple paragraphs and watch how it changes. As you stay sober longer, you just go, oh my God, I get it now. But what happened with Bill was always seeking enlightenment. That's why he drank the way he did. But he's reading this thing and they all have one thing in common. It was ego collapse. And he began to feel that he couldn't do anything about this. Ebby sticks his head in the door. And if you know the story, it's one of the most, I think, beautiful stories of all time. And it's in your book. He steps in the door and he's in his suit and he's all polished up and he says, "Hi, buddy." And he says, "Hello, old friend." He says, "How you doing?" And Bill says, "I'm really licked this time." What step is that? Step one. And he says, "Remember that shit we were talking about at your table?" He says, "Is there anything, can we just go there again?" And Bill says, "I don't know if there's anything, buddy, but we must have, I must have something. I need something." That's step two. "There I humbly offered myself to God as I understood him." This is Bill's experience writing this book 5 years after having had the experience, well, about 4 years after having had the experience. And he's reflecting on what happened in that hospital bed. "There I humbly offer myself to God as I then understood, to do with me as thou would." That sounds a lot like step three to me. And then he says, "I placed myself unreservedly under his care and direction," step two, "and admitted for the first time that of myself I was nothing, without him I was lost." That's a step two. "I ruthlessly faced my sins," step 6 and 7, "and became willing to have my newfound friend take them root and branch," 6 and 7. "I've not had a drink since. My schoolmate visited me. I fully acquainted him with my problems." He started to write his inventory, and his hand was so shaky that he handed the paper to Ebby and he just started telling him all his Now, you have to remember too, Oxford Group was a 4-step program, it had nothing to do with this stuff. This is two men at the bedside. And then he says, "I fully acquainted with my problems and the deficiencies, and we made a list of people I'd hurt toward I'd felt resentment." Now you're talking about steps 4, 5, and 8 right there. He's telling Ebby, Ebby's writing it down, and he's looking at the names. These are the people I screwed over, man. And then he says, "I felt resentment. I expressed an entire willingness to approach these individuals, admitting my wrong. Never was I a bit critical. I was to write all such matters to the utmost of my ability." He's identifying step 9. Then he says, "I was to test my thinking to new God consciousness within." Step 10, "Common sense would thus become uncommon sense. I was to sit quietly when in doubt." Remember that? When in doubt, what do? It just tells us when agitated or doubtful. In just step 11, asking only for his direction and strength to meet my problems as he would have, and never was it to pray for myself. That is what we're talking about. He had that experience, steps 2 through 11, in the bed that day. And if you know the story, it was after Ebby had been there that day and they did that inventory thing and they said, "Take a root and branch." It was that night he had that profound spiritual experience where he was sitting on his bedside. And Silky came in and said, "Holy shit, man, something happened. Whatever it is, you better hang on to it, brother." And that's Alcoholics Anonymous. So Bill looks back and reflects. So that piece in 13, and then our 12 steps came out of that experience. There was 4 steps in the Oxford Group. This is what happened at Bill's bedside, and this is our program. That language is just too, it's too sort of obvious to deny. So we get into this place in step 3 and we start, these old guys telling me let go and let God. That's not step 3. That is not step 3. Step 3 is you look at this information here that talks about the fact that, is there, maybe with the exception of the 9th step, is there anybody aware that there's more specific sort of instructions here to follow? I mean, there's not very much to do, but there's instructions to follow on pages 60 to 63. And if you're an alcoholic of my type, those pages will be the most destroyed pages in your book. There'll be coffee stains, tear stains. There's going to be all kinds of margin writing and ripped pages. You know why? That's the most, because it's about me. That's all. The rest of the book is about all of us. This is about me. And it says it's going to tell us, here's the how and why. But so, hold on a sec. No, that's not where I want to go. It says being convinced we're step 3. This doesn't leave much to sort of argue here, right? Then when you're in that position that you're whooped. So let's say you're 2, 3, 4 days sober, the fog started to lift and you're having a relationship with your sponsor or somebody carrying this message to you. It says now we're at step 3. There's a legitimate geographical place to be. We are now at step 3. And it says that we decided to turn our will in our life. What do we mean by that? And what do we do? What do we mean by that? And what do we do? These old guys who gave me that message didn't know what do we mean by that. They had never found it in the book, looked at it in the book, thought that the book was relevant. It's not their fault. It's called groupthink. It's all over Alcoholics Anonymous. If you have a really good little area and this is a good meeting, a big book meeting, God love you. But this is not the norm. That is not the norm. The norm is don't drink and go to meetings. The meeting makers make it. That is the norm. is that if you go to meetings, somehow, some way, you're going to stay connected enough to Alcoholics Anonymous that you won't drink or drug again. Now, you'll go home and you'll want to for 22 and a half hours till the next meeting. But the bottom line is you might just hang in there like John Wayne for about 25 years and tell people, don't drink and go to meetings. And then from 1968 till I don't know, not that long ago, that was Alcoholics Anonymous. And it was the Alcoholics Anonymous I was in, and all through 87 and all the late 80s and the 90s. It was AA where I was. That's just me. You might have a totally different experience. And every once in a while, someone chirps in and tells me, nah, it wasn't like that. You just were an ignorant little bastard. I said, okay, thanks for listening. Listen, here's my address. Why don't you come here and tell me that? That's a very interesting thing, we because I don't say these things to fight. I'm sharing my experience. Okay, so the first requirement is to be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. Now, if you've been around Alcoholics Anonymous for a little while, what we will do here is, I'll come back to respite care in a second. We use this step to say any life run on self-will. So what does that mean? How about your spiritual life, your financial life, your sexual life, your partnership life? Any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. So any area of your life that right now is not bearing fruit, I guarantee you self-will's intact. You're having a self-will issue there. It'll seem like it's all the other people in your life and your bad luck. It'll be those two things are the two things you look at. But it's not it. It's will. Your will is attached to it. That's all. You got, and there's other areas of your life where you're just flying and woo, it might be AA and all, and it's because God's there, but it's we do that with the people who've been around here. If it's respite care, we say to the guys, okay, look, your life is in trouble. And we don't have, if we get them early enough, we don't have to convince them that they're in trouble. But you give an alcoholic or an addict, especially a cocaine addict, you give them 2 nights sleep and a cheeseburger, and all of a sudden they know everything. It's like if enough time separates between their last drink and their next drink, you're gonna lose them. You're gonna lose them, because alcoholism is what happens when you don't drink. It's not what happens when you do drink. When I drink, I'm okay. Seldom suicidal, almost always homicidal, but I am okay. When I stop drinking, I'm not okay. I want to die. When I'm not drinking, stone cold sober, I will make the most insane decision of my life and return to drinking, because I can't feel like that one more goddamn day. Not one more day. And I'm doing it for you, and I'm doing it for you, and I'm doing it for you. And nobody appreciates the fact of how hard this is. And don't you understand? Don't you understand? And bang, I'm hammered again. And it's like, how did this happen? It begins to unravel. And I think drinking is my problem. That's what the problem is here. I think drinking is my solution. Drinking probably saved me from dying of alcoholism. That would be my guess, because so many times I felt like this was the end, and I slipped into a bar or a tavern or something like this and bumped into an old buddy and had a couple of drinks, and all of a sudden I forgot how upset I was. I forgot that I was supposed to kill myself today. I forgot that that's what happens, and I'm off on another debauch, another tear for 12, 14 days, whatever it is. I end up in custody. I come alive, and I've hurt. I don't know who I've hurt. I spent my entire adolescence and adulthood in prison, like young adulthood. It's like, this is not, it's automatic for me. I go. This isn't going to be dainty. It's not going to be like I'm going to relapse gently. And I take a lot of people with me. And that's at a young age. I only have an 11-year drinking career. And by the time I was 23, I was beaten to a pulp. And that's when I surrendered. So we get into this place that says, any life that runs on self-will can hardly be a success. And on that basis, we're on collision with people all the time, even though our motives are good. Guys, this is sober. Even though our motives are good. Your motives mean nothing. The world will judge us by our actions, and we want to be judged by our motives, even though our motives are good. Most people try to live in self-propulsion, and this is where they go into the actor piece. And that all makes sense to us when we hear it, right? I'm the actor. I'm supposed to take the direction from the director. I'm supposed to go to this place, move this way, look this way, change it. But I all of a sudden start directing and say, you know what? I don't think that really works here. That doesn't really work for me. This is what I need. And so what happens, we become problematic with people we meet. We start to arrange the ballet, the lights, and we try to do that. And we start sending out that message to people, and our motives are good. We just want people to be happy. And we have the egotistic delusion, it says right there, that if only people would do as we wish, this show would be great. Life would be great. If only people would do what we thought they should do, And it's like, you'll turn to people beside you and go, right? We do it in AA, right? Like, if they would just do what we wanted them to do, everything would be great. Everybody, including himself, will be happy. That is a delusional statement. If everybody just did what you wish, you'd be happy. I'm going to tell you something. There's no end to that self-centeredness. There's no end to that. So you'll never get that from that. We try to make these arrangements. We sometimes become virtuous. So we get in this toolbox of self-will and recognize this. Being a kind, nice person isn't the objective. Being a kind, nice person under God's motives is, but being a kind, nice person isn't the objective, because under those conditions as well, we're still trying to get our way. You know, I could be mean, egotistical, and I'll be arrogant at times. And if that doesn't work, then I'll turn on the charm. And if that doesn't work, I'll try harder in both. But I'm always going to try to get my way. And I push people and I push people and I push people. We made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. So I'm out there trying to run this stuff. I'm trying to do his job. And it says the first requirement, you know, is when we get to this is that we quit playing God. But we're going to go down here and we start to think, but this is where we come into the resentment piece. It starts to build up stuff inside of our stuff. Our self-worth suffers. You know, we start to doubt ourselves. And for me, and I'm not saying alcoholism maybe not a very good person, but it sure didn't help. You know, it didn't help. The actions and the place I started going to and the people I started running with, my morality went right down the shitter. I mean, it was pretty bad. But here's where it goes. So it talks about the play not suiting him and his unhappiness. And then it says, is he not really a self-seeker when trying to be kind? And then it goes on, is he not a victim of the delusion that he can wrest satisfaction? So a victim, and the delusion is that I can be happy if I just manage well. Isn't it the victim of the delusion that I can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if I only manage well? My life's unmanageable by me. First step. Second step is I need a new manager. Third step is introducing me to the idea here. This delusion is what needs to be smashed. It's not like let go and let God, or what those old guys were telling me. This delusion needs to be smashed. Is it, you know, so, and the thing is, I've never seen a victim get sober. I'm 35 years sober. I take people through the steps all the time. People who've been molested as children, people who've been hurt and burnt to death, or burnt to with cigarettes, and you know, I work with those people. So do you. Some of you people. It's like I work with them, and if they stay victims, they never get well. They never get sober. This victim thing's important. And the other piece is they rest. Okay. WREST means to wrestle, to take by force, to impose my will on it. So remember that. And this is what we're trying to, we get up in our mornings and we make plans for our day. And then we begin to push our will at them to make those plans come to fruition. It's a way of life. It's got nothing. It's not like conscious decisions that we're going to destroy everybody in our lives and make them unhappy. It's a subconscious thing that's going on inside of us that just pisses people off. And we don't understand what's going on. Our actors, self-centered and egocentric. Now, I came to Alcoholics Anonymous because I've been beaten to a pulp by my drinking and by the ramifications of my drinking. I get to page 62. We're taking a real left turn here. Everything about recovery starts here. This thing about identifying the problem and all that kind of stuff is absolutely mandatory and a very powerful experience. That first step experience is absolutely necessary. But imagine you're sober for a week or two, and someone's walking you through this stuff and holding your hand and spending time with you and talking to you about that there is this power. We're not going to define it or anything now, but I want you to see this here. Selfishness, self-centeredness. That we think is the root of your troubles. You mean it's not drinking? No. It's not alcoholism? It's not my genetic predisposition to alcoholism? No. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root. Well, if that's at the root, then that's what we have to get to. We don't get there without this step. We don't get there without this information. This information is not in the 12 and 12. It talks about selfishness in the 12 and 12 in a way that I can say, well, I'm not selfish. I'd give you the shirt off my back. Give you the shirt off my back. In here, it says, whoa, hold on. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, I step on the toes of my fellows. They retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us, seemingly without provocation. And this is that. Those are my columns in my inventory. Those right there are my columns in my inventory. Invariably, I find that sometime in the past that I made decisions based on self, which later placed me in a position to be hurt. That's a holy shit. And it doesn't matter. Judgment doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that I was 8 when I was molested. It doesn't matter. We're looking at the facts here. We're not looking at the emotionalism and the rationality behind it. We're looking at the facts. So our troubles, we think, are basically of our own making. Why is that beautiful news? Why is that wonderful news? Because all the troubles that I thought I had in my life around being a victim, I could do nothing about. Not a damn thing. And I was just going to stay there. I was going to be, and I did. And again, I'm 245, 250 pounds of weightlifting, jail pump, and steroid induced muscle and anger for years. And nothing hurts me, afraid of nothing, bound by this shit. Sleeping at night with terror, bound by this shit. It rises out of ourselves. There's an extreme example of self-run riot, though I don't usually think so. And it says above everything. I had this conversation with Sponsi yesterday because he said, I'm selfish, man. I don't think I'm going to be able to get rid of it. And I said, how many times have you and I read this goddamn book together? He's 11 years sober. And I said, you know that you can't say that to me, right? Like, you can be a sponsee that's just not doing well. You don't have to say it out loud to me. Like, it says right there, above everything, we alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness. Is that not you? Well, yeah, I just, oh man, we must, or it kills us. It doesn't even say the booze kills us. It says selfishness kills us. God makes it possible to be rid of that stuff. There's no way of doing it without a power. There's no way of doing about something. And again, we're not identifying this power. You're having an experience here. And I'm going to tell you guys, I tell people this in step 4, and we won't get there in my count tonight. But when it says in step 4, we're beginning to have a spiritual experience, and it says that in step 5, one of the promises. But in step 4, it says in the fear inventory, it says, because we're on a new basis now, the basis of trusting and relying upon this power. That's a big leap from step 2 to step 4. And there's work to be done in here. There's no doubt about it. And as a 35-year sober guy, I still spend a lot of time in 60 to 63. And I think that it's really important to take people through the steps. Like, we'll get to what they have to do. But right here, it's like, I can't do this without the God of my understanding. I can't do this without a power that's legitimately real to me. I won't have any faith in that power if I don't, I have to have it. And then, and I have to have it. And it says, where do I get that? It says that we had to have God's help. This is the how and the why. First of all, we had to quit playing God. That's the first thing we have to do, is quit playing God. What does that look like? That looks like directing my life and everybody else's life. That's what it looks like. Does that mean you don't go to work, or you don't clean up your house, or you don't? No, you do those things and quit playing God. Just don't stop trying to get other people to do their shit. Just quit playing God. I got to tell you, the people in your life are really going to appreciate this when this is actually actuated and you're doing this. The people around you go, what the hell's going wrong with you, man? What's going on? Because you're not telling them what to do anymore. You really want to pick that shit up. You're making a hell of a mess. Just stop, you just stop playing, just stop being a bully. Stop pushing people around. Next, we decided hereafter in this drama life, God's going to be the director. Now, I want to suggest to you that this is a position. This is a subjective position. It's not, I remember I was at some years ago, there was, when we go to these big conferences and stuff like that, there'd be all these sort of little guys selling shit, and stones and rings and all that stuff. And there were bumper stickers. And one of the bumper stickers said, God is my co-pilot. And then another guy came up with a bumper sticker a couple years ago, which I like much better. It says, if God's your co-pilot, you're in the wrong fucking seat. So it's like, it's true. And I apologize for swearing. I'm not really swearing. I'm just quoting the bumper sticker. No. The fact of the matter is it says here that God is the principal. He's the director. He's the principal. We are his agents. Do you guys understand the nature of that relationship? An agent doesn't tell the principal what to do. An agent represents the principal. If you have an insurance agent, that agent represents the principal. If your principal here in Canada is Cooperators, the agent is a guy named Rob Hampson, and he represents them. And is he a good insurance agent? Yes, he is. He represents him well. Now, that's exactly what we're talking about here. You're going to be a representative of God. That's it. We are his agents. He is the principal. We are his agents. He is the director. I am the actor. He is the father. I am his child. It's a subjective relationship. And when I think that it says most ideas are simple. This is not a simple idea, but under this concept, it's the keystone of the new life. I'm going to take a position of being subjective. I'm not going to bully the world around anymore. God will be God and I will be me. Isn't that an interesting position to take? I can't do that all day, every day, but I can do that every moment, every day. Does that make sense? And how do I know when I need to do that? When I want to punch someone in the face. How do I know when I want to do that? When I feel like I've been wronged, or when I've been harmed, or when I get upset, or when, I want to yell at the waitress who's serving my table, or somebody cuts me off and I start smashing the windshield. And, that's how I can tell that I need to get back to this position, because it's a position. It's a position. God is the Father and I am the child. Now, the reason I emphasize that is because on the top of page 63, if you've got your books open, what does it say? This, I want you to think about the last 6, 8 days, 12 days of your last run. I want you to think about the torment and the pain and the anguish that involved, whether you're in custody or whether you're in a hospital, or whether you had your frantic family screaming, please get help, or I want you to think about that, because this matters here. It matters right here. If you're sober for a while, you forget that shit. And the need for what we're talking about here is much lessened by years of self-will creeping back in there very slowly. But right now, I am an empty shell. And it says, when we sincerely take such a position, what position? He is the Father and I am the child. Remarkable things follow. I'm 3 weeks sober. And I start recognizing that I'm 3 weeks sober. The obsession to drink is not there right now. It's been with me my whole life, and it's not there. What the hell's going on here? And I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. It says, we had a new employer, being all powerful. He provided what we needed. What do we need? What do we need? He provides what we need. We need each other. He provides what we need. It says, if we keep close to him and perform his work well. How do we keep close to him? We'd be aware of this arrangement, that there's something and I'm not it. And I perform his work well, which is get on with the rest of the steps, help others, be good to his kids. Just start saying yes and please and thank you and those kinds of things. And established on such a footing, we become less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and our designs. More and more we become interested in seeing what we can contribute to life. That is actually what happens. It's weird. And if you don't believe this, you're tearing it down for years, and all of a sudden now you've got this family, and you're 2 or 3 months sober and 4 months sober, and your family starts coming to you for advice, or someone else has been directed to you for advice. It's like, it's uncanny. Your workplace, all of a sudden now you become some goddamn hero at your workplace, and you're the guy that everybody's coming to because they need advice. You were the wrecking ball. 3 months ago, 4 months ago, they wanted you gone. They wanted you out of there. And now all of a sudden you've become this asset. You become this sort of asset. Our little plans, the more and more we become interested in it, says we felt new power flow in and we enjoyed peace of mind. We discovered we could face life successfully. As we become conscious of his presence, we become to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, and the hereafter. Does that not sound beautiful? And then it says those 3 words, we were reborn. This is what they say just before they introduce us to the 3rd step prayer. Under this concept, taking this position, that's the 3rd step. It's being subjective. That's the 3rd step. And under that position, in that position, we were reborn. And then it introduces us to this. We're now in step 3. And some of us said to our maker, when I pointed that stuff out to Ebby got beside the bed and they said words like this. Bill recounted them. Like we said a prayer like this. God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self. Not drinking. Self. That constant diatribe in my head that's directing my life. That constant voice in my head that keeps telling me who's a dick, who's a good person, who full of judgment. That voice in my head that constantly tells me that I'm not in the place I'm supposed to be, that I should be over here. That voice that says I need more of this and more of this and more of this. That voice that is constantly on me. More education, more books, more reading, more studying, more steps, new sponsor, new town, more big book group studies. It's constantly, and the ego attaches itself to some pretty good shit sometimes, but it's still the ego. As long as it's a goddamn voice that's in your head, it's directing the show. It's the ego, and it's still hiding behind good stuff. Like I told you, it says even though our motives are good, this is going to still come out in good stuff. The idea is about willfulness. I have to be free of my will. And it says, take away my difficulties. And some guys will say to me, you're sober 3 weeks, right? I don't really have any difficulties. Well, What about the ones you had in the detox when your liver was halfway out your mouth and I had to stuff it back in there? How about those difficulties? Can you remember those difficulties? Where are they? Where are they gone? And then, well, I haven't felt like that for a few weeks. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. You see what I'm saying? Like, take away my difficulties. That's my new puppy there. Relax for a second. Take away my difficulties. The victory over them will bear witness to those. Oh, help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. So what we're talking about at this point is how I'm going to demonstrate that, how I'm going to share that with others. If you ask me, people have, holy shit, Marty, I remember you. You were crazy. This is like 3 weeks ago. You were crazy. And I, how come you're not crazy anymore? And I'll tell them it was God's power, God's love, God's grace. You know, and I said, I can't understand. They go, oh, you got all religious. I said, I don't think I have a religious bone in my body, to be honest with you, dude. But I spent a lot of time in prayer, meditation, and connection with this power. I spent a lot of time being an agent for God. And I let people know, you know, and yeah, I get a power. I got to report to the power anyway. So he gives me the power to come and see you. That's how it works. And it says, may I do thy will always. And we thought, well, before taking this step, I won't talk about that when it says we have to abandon ourselves utterly to him. That means all of us. We have to abandon ourselves utterly. And then it says it's talking about who we might be able to take this step with. So that's an important piece, but I'm not finished here. I have to go into this fourth step stuff. This is still third step work when we're talking about it. It says, next we launched on a course of vigorous action, the step of which is a personal house cleaning, which many of us had never attempted. And it's as though our decision, our third step decision, was vital and crucial. It can't have any effect at all. It's not going to have a little, it's going to be of little use unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things that block us. Now, again, this is where I get accused of rushing people through the steps. It says it once. I don't make the rules. If somebody does it, and Mark, same with me, I'm in that hotel room. Mark says, now I want you to give me a grudge list. And I started doing a grudge list. He'd left. He jumped on a plane to go back to Hunt, Texas that night. And about 2 days later, I shot him a grudge list. And he said, now I'm going to direct you through this fourth step in the big book. And then you're on your own, buddy. And that's what I did. I did a fifth step with another guy. I stayed in contact with Mark up until he died. But the bottom line is that these are simple directions. And if taken, remarkable things happen. And it doesn't matter if you've been around here for a little while. It says it's not going to have any effect. That thing that happens in the third step, this third step prayer, this engagement we have, we always tell people about this huge, people say 1, 2, 3 out, 1, 2, 3 out. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as taking the third step and not doing a grudge list. It says right here, it says not going to have any effect unless you get rid of these things that are blocking us. We got to get down to symptoms and conditions. So we make a grudge list. That's how you know, that's how you've committed to the third step. It's the only way you can know you've taken the third step if you're doing a grudge list. And that can be the standard that you hold yourself and others and people you work with to. So the third step of Alcoholics Anonymous becomes this thing about opening up a wide sort of a gap that I can sort of walk through spiritually into the rest of my life. And again, I would never be accused of being a religious guy. But people know about this power in my life. They know it. And somebody said to me just not that long ago, Sandy used to say, Sandy Beach, who became a friend of mine, he used to say, do you want to be an honest man or do you want to be known as an honest man? I don't know. You know, and I used to talk a lot of spirituality. And somebody said to me a few weeks ago, you now, Marty, at 35 years of sobriety, I'm just getting this feedback now that I demonstrate more spiritual elements of living than I ever did in the years before. Isn't that something? And I don't know how to take that. I don't believe in time. Right? I don't believe there's any chronological time. And so I could be 3 months sober. It don't matter. It's happening when it's happening. But the process is always the same. And I have a lot of fidelity to the big book and a lot of fidelity to the process. And I love Alcoholics Anonymous because it's given me a life beyond my wildest dreams. And it doesn't exist without this step 3. And I just want to say one more thing and I'll shut up. Almost invariably, this is the hub we go back to when struggles come. This is the place we go back to. We can sit very quickly and quietly in step 2, but God is either everything or else he's nothing. But it's when we go back to this deal we made in step 3. It isn't about taking back your will. It's about the eagles find a new way to hide. The eagles found a different way to hide. And these are guys sober 20, 30 years, 40 years who want to kill themselves. The eagle, and they got everything. They've got everything, you know, but except this connection. So this is how important it is, folks. Thanks so much for listening to me. Summer, you're an angel. I love being, I love doing this, and you asked me, and thanks for listening, guys. I hope I didn't go over too long. I think, thanks. Thanks very much.